3-eye atlas, perihelion, and the cosmic download. Now, you've clicked onto this because you're like, okay, this is another perspective of the 3-eye atlas. And it definitely is. And we are definitely deep diving into what this as a collective, how we're approaching this, how we're understanding it. But let's first talk about what this means. So this comet is something that has never been around before. This is why the 3 is here, because this is the third object of its kind. And they're seeing this as a very, very old comet, older than our solar system itself, older than these guys. And they're billions of years, right? So now the eye is interstellar. We also have the word atlas, which is that there are many telescopes in our solar system governed by different parts of the world, right? And they have different views and, capture different things, have different technology, whatever. This one is called Atlas. And it's there to look and see whether this is something that could be a problem to our world. Will it collide? What's going to happen? We need to see the course of where this is going. And so we move on to perihelion, the approach to the sun. And we're talking about this a lot. So hopefully you make some notes. And so with the idea of the comet, it has a comet-like body. It's like, quote unquote, like, because it doesn't behave like a comet. A comet normally goes in the orbit of any kind of the system of the planets, of the sun. It normally gets captured by its gravitational pull. But this guy, it's doing its own thing. And they call that hyperbolic because it's like, it's within a space, but it's got its own conditions. And so now, my reason or interest in this is because it's so rebellious. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a planet that all the scientists are scratching their heads, all the astronomers are scratching their heads. What's going on? What's happening here? And so, yeah, did the deep dive, went into various rabbit holes. And there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of people, doing like fear-based stuff. And one thing about my channel, especially if you're new here, we don't do fear-based stuff. Yeah, we do high resonance stuff here. And so we are looking at this from a way of how is this helping us? So I did some digging in terms of what's happening across the years, and we'll get there shortly. First, let's talk about heliocentric distances. This is talking about, let's say this is the sun, right? And its diameter let's put that at the sun, is going to measure its distance from, let's say, the sun to Mercury. And then that distance will be an AU value. And that value is what we're going to talk about now. So there are set values, much like with a ruler. A ruler has 1 centimeters, 2 centimeters, but you can have 10 millimeters, 20 millimeters. There are rules, they're like set guides as to how you can measure something. Much in the same way, they've got approximately, this is more of an approximation of the values of the sun's distance from the sun to the earth, from the sun to Mars. So I've put these values here. And for those who are taking notes, because I'm really chuffed by that, people are taking notes. I would say this is something to note down as we keep going, because when NASA's website decides to update itself, they are going to be speaking in this language, right? And it will give you an understanding of whereabouts the comet is. Now, I was very interested into when, because officially the 1st of July is when they first saw it, which was in Chile, and it was in the constellation of Sagittarius. Very interesting. But I went to interested in like why the archived visuals, what was happening there. So from May to June, so they've been looking at this from May, it was 6.4 AU from the sun. So where's 6.4? So it's not here. It's between Jupiter and Saturn. Yeah. And so this is where it was around May, June of 2025. And they say it's beyond Jupiter's orbit, which would make sense because it's moving away from these parameters. Now, I love the rebellion of the Three-Eye Atlas because it's saying that it's from somewhere and they need to collect more data to understand where is this somewhere. And right now, all they're going to say is just a star system from another star system, or just from another region of the galaxy that they just don't know much about. Now, obviously, I think in this lifetime, I think we know information is not always pulled out to the public. So I'm just using facts from what has been told and just going from there. And I think it is either you use your discernment, which probably would be the best thing, to kind of work out what's happening. Let's look at the thoughts of the collective, shall we? So, and then we can go into the astrological understanding of Three-Eye Atlas, and maybe it can give us some idea of what's actually happening here. If you look at my earlier video, it talks about astrology. Everybody and everything has an astrology chart. So why not Three-Eye Atlas? Anyway, so what are the thoughts of the collective? Let's just make sure we push this up. Now, I've seen it. You guys have probably seen it. There's like a 3D long elongated spaceship type of thingy that's going around. And it's fun to kind of explore an idea of like some extraterrestrial being. But let's just keep going, right? So there's an emphasis on Mars, right? Just in general. And correct me if I'm wrong, right? There's an emphasis on Mars. And people are saying, no, it's not a comet, but it's a spaceship. I believe it's a spaceship. Some people are saying, oh, it's the Anunnaki. Ladies and gentlemen, if it's the Anunnaki, based on what is being read, they don't. It seems like it will be a long day for everybody. But there's that theory. And then people are saying there's 6-foot aliens or 7-foot aliens of African American descent. Some are saying, oh, it's the apocalypse. There's a lot of really bold statements going around. A lot of cinematic music, a lot of CGI. There's a lot of things happening. And the one that stood out to me the most, which I feel based on scripts or older understanding of the skies, the downloading of consciousness. Now that sounds a bit whimsical. It sounds a bit like, what? But we know across time that innovation, ideas, things that we've marveled at across time is something there had to be something about that, the collective consciousness that created certain things. So, like I mentioned before, the idea of cathedrals, like no one has made a cathedral of this kind of style and detail magnitude ever again. And because there was a different mindset, there was a different understanding about how to look at things. And so it's fair to say, when we talk about consciousness, we're talking about innovation, we're talking about those aha moments, which is very Neptunian, it's very Uranian. And I will talk more about that. So those are the thoughts of the collective. And that had me understanding. I was like, in terms of the collective, we've already understood or recently had a scenario where there was these radical types that were saying the rapture's coming. And this was perfectly aligned with the eclipses. And this was what, September? This was only last month. And I feel like even with this narrative, and they were laughed at, right? They were laughed at, did you just sell all your things? All this kind of stuff. But then this month, or near into this month, we have this phenomena coming along, or re-emphasizing itself, because there are some really interesting things happening in November when it comes to this, the Three-Eye Atlas, that the same formula is being shown. Okay, so I feel like it's about being able to understand what is it about this fascination with world end phenomena. Like, what is that? I think throughout people's course of time, they've at least gone through one or two conspiracies about the world ending, right? Or somebody prophesied about the world ending. And they're still here. Everybody's still here. So it would be fair to say that there is this kind of drive, or this kind of like, what is it about this need to know, this desire to have an apocalypse? And I did some research in a couple guys from Berkeley. They did some research on how people elicit religion based on their conviction, but we will go there. But I would say the downloading of consciousness sounds the most logical. If we're having a discourse, it sounds the most logical. I think the idea of aliens coming is something we've I'm talking about a collective when we say we've, right? There's a set of collectives who are desiring this phenomena. And I guess it's because it's outside of ourselves. We want something new. Maybe we just don't feel excited enough, or we don't, whatever, right? Maybe just to build the bridge, maybe these ideas of monsters and aliens are more astral, more subconscious, as opposed to something that works on this physical plane. Okay, they like that. Let's just say that for argument's sake. Yeah. So let's move on astrologically, right? So I've gone around and done some research. I took it from a YouTube channel, but I'm not sure to mention them. I don't know, like if you want to, I can. I really like this astrologer, but I don't know. I'm going this way and that way. I agree with a lot of what they say, but yeah, if you want to know, I'll put it in the comments, basically. But and I did my own one, so it's kind of like it was inspired by their chart that they have for the Three-Eye Atlas Perihelion, but I've made them into a whole sign format. And let's get started. So it's starting from the 29th of October. And if we can see, the Three-Eye Atlas is in the constellation of Libra in the 9th house. And we understand that the 9th house is about travel, learning, and expansion. So, what does that tell us when it comes to its journey, coming up in this house? This is about learning. So it's giving Mercury. It's giving this idea of downloads, right? Whoa, what's happening? And it's this giving the idea of travel, right? And in this house at 19 degrees, whereas 3-hour Atlas is at 22, so they're very close, so they're conjunct. And so in astrologically, right? So when we have Venus here, this is talking about expansion in a different way. If you look at my Venus 101 video, it talks about thinking of Venus as like the sea and seeing that you can get a well of information and knowledge from the sea. And I feel like that's not any different when we come to the 3-eye Atlas. This idea of consciousness download. But this idea of consciousness or communication is heavily depicting Mercury. And we'll start to look more into this Mercurian state. Now, we also have a stellium in Scorpio. We have the Sun, we have Mars, and we have Mercury, which goes in retrograde. So this I feel connects with this 3-eye Atlas energy. Mercury gets about. It doesn't want to stick around. It kind of like, hey, gotta go. What are you telling me? What information have you got for me? Oh yeah. Okay, that sounds great. Okay, let's go. Let's keep going. And my astrology mind was like, hey, I wonder if there is an alignment in terms of how Mercury has traveled across this time in terms of this year, and how it's behaving in line with the 3-eye Atlas. And I found some really interesting finds. Again, the astrologer that I am, I had to do my research, and I am basically giving you what I found. And yeah, it was fun. It's a fun. First, it was intuitive, and then it was like data driven, and I was like, hey, this is cool. So this stellium, what is it telling us in our 10th house? So we know 10th house is about our reputation. It's about career. It's also about fame, right? So we've got something really interesting about this area here. We've also got Mars. Mars is about action. Mars isn't your friend, is more your comrade, right? It's going to be for what you are for, against what you're against. Don't take it personally. And so it would be fair to say, if we look at Mercury as downloads of consciousness, it would be important to know where your consciousness is at. And we will talk about different varying levels of consciousness later on. And so where Mercury is at, Mercury goes into retrograde. It goes into Sagittarius, which, to be fair, this whole year, all the retrogrades have been under the fire sign, which is something to note. And I feel like what's happened here is that there is an expansion of highlighting, right? It is being highlighted right now. It is getting things done. I alluded to this idea of Mercury moving around and getting things done, or even from May, this 3-eye Atlas, and I'm literally, I am alluding Mercury to be like the 3-eye Atlas. I don't know in which sense yet, or in an astral sense or a physical sense, but I feel like there's a parallel. But I was at school, you would be in your classrooms and, you know, the teacher's teaching, and you'll just have somebody, you'll see a figure outside. Either you hear it or you see it. And you see, they look through the window to check if everyone's behaving. It's generally the headmaster, headmistress, and they're looking, and they're doing the role. They're looking stern, like, is everyone behaving themselves? Okay, keep walking down the corridor, and they go to every single classroom, and they do this, and everybody in the class like, oh, look, the head teacher, and everyone sits and behaves themselves or sits orderly. And I see that quite like how this kind of traveling, this ninth house energy of like, I'm just checking in to see what's happening. Is everyone doing what they're supposed to do? Are people listening to the teachers of this world? Are they listening, or are they doing things that they should not be doing? Just checking that you guys know. That's why, like, when everyone is scratching their heads and they're like, where did this come from? This is the head teacher. It's walking down the corridors of the galaxy, because it's not even the way it's traveling. It's not traveling in time in the orbits of Jupiter or anything like that. It's kind of like just outside of it. We can call that the corridor, right? And that's how I see it. And so where we have Mercury going to retrograde, it is giving this energy of downloading information at that point in its retrograde. And again, like I said, I'm going to give you my findings shortly, darling. And so let's talk about where 3i Atlas is going to be on the 29th of October. So it's going to be direct in the third house of Aries with Chiron retrograde. So what's the third house? So third house is, its Lord is Gemini, and we have Aries here. So this is a very nice placement for it to be in, because Gemini and Aries work very well. And it's also about action. So there's the kind of Martian energy is still, there's still that talk here, and that would then align with this emphasis on Mars that we're seeing on social media. And Chiron is the guy that is the wounded warrior. It's the one that had to learn things the hard way, but had so much to give. And I see this opposition as more of like an observation of sorts, right? But it's benevolent. We've got Venus conjunct it. So there's something benevolent about those who are in a space of the wounded teacher, or the ones that the narrative right now is the chosen ones. It's very, but like, let's talk it from my perspective, or like the ones that have influence, right? The ones that are here to teach, the ones that are doing it with love, the ones that are doing it with care, and sharing their views. I've said even, I can't remember the video it was now, in terms of the collective consciousness, that I like those Pluto in Scorpio and Pluto in Sagittarius. Those guys know the world before social media, and they know it after. And they are very, very unique in their thinking. They're not so easily swayed to go into hive minds. And there's nothing wrong with hive minds, because they have purpose as well. But I'm saying in terms of this Chiron element, that's what it reminds me of in terms of the collective consciousness. We've gone through so much, and we've got so much to share. And so therefore we share it, and we share it with benevolence, and we share it with love. We don't look at other people left and right and say, oh, look at that person, they're horrible, or why they're not doing that properly. that's very Saturnian, and it's very structured and rigid, and it's more like being a bit looser with it. It's being more Mercury, right? And it's more of like kind of like that black sun energy. So that's how I see this aspect between the ninth and the third house, because the third house talks about things in your close proximity, who are you connecting with, and how that is being affected. And so there's a lot of love here. So now we've got the opposite, right? And we've now got the trine. So this is really fun. Trines are very powerful because it's almost like a power up, right? So you have Libra, you have Libra in the ninth, Leo in the seventh, and anything with Leo is going to magnify or make something known, right? And then you have Aries. So these three, this trine is very powerful. And I feel like what we have here, the trine is telling us how you're going to show up. Are you going to show up in the darker side of that Leo energy, of being more like war-based or being more like shadow-based? Or are you kind of come up and be fun, not fun, but like Leo's entertaining, right? So are you exploring that? And I feel like these are more, I'm expressing the 3i Atlas energy in a way that it's like, how do we understand this comet? How are we understanding it? And this is my take. This is the seventh house is about marriage, commitment. It generally kind of talks about your long-term relationships. And so the fact that it's trining there in Leo, and Leo is a fixed sign, it's very loyal, it's very, it's gonna go to hell and back to make sure that everything is fine, right? So we've got this energy here that is really activating this Aries, like to say, go, 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 it's time, it's action. And so there's that. So let me know how you see that one. I'm really excited about this 3i Atlas because I feel like there are some parallels in terms of how we can grow. And then on let's say on the shadow side, understanding it from why is it every time there are some strong astrological movements that there are these fear-based elements that take place. And if you see the Mars 101 video, we talk about Mars's moons, right? Which is fear and phobia. And you're like, why are they called fear and phobia? The very things that happen around the time of something that could lead to ascension, or in terms of the consciousness, in terms of downloads. And why not see if the time where you should feel fearful or feel drawn into something that maybe isn't serving you, do the opposite. Mercury is the headmistress, the head teacher, looking down the corridor and saying, do you deserve for me to keep walking by and say, okay, you guys are good, you've got it? Or do you want me to open that door and tell all of you off and say that you've got detention at the end of the day for 1 hour? What is it that you want? And so that's what I feel like this energy is. It's loving, it's benevolent, but it's also very much observing. Again, very Mercury. So there's that. So let's continue. Remember these heliocentric distances. Right. So these are the movements of the 3i Atlas. Now, I've aligned it with Mercury's movement in terms of Mercury retrograde and its transits, as well as the movements of, I should have put that down, as well as the movements of the 3i Atlas. So we know the Mercury retrograde begins on the 9th of November. So we have on the October 18th, the 3-hour atlas was 1.46 AU. And that was approaching a solar conjunction, which, as you can see here, it depends on which system you're using, but it would be conjunct the sun. But this was the October 18th. I'm doing October 29th. So at this time, it's here. And then the transit is Scorpio in terms of Mercury, right? So let's say these two, let's just box that. Right. Then we have October 31st, and 3-hour atlas is 1.38 AU from the sun. And we have a pre-shadow. So bear in mind, you see 1.38. So we're looking at it being 1.38. It's around here. So it's actually near enough around Mars and the Earth, right? And that's so where Mercury is pre-shadow in terms of Mercury retrograde. And that is that transit is in Sagittarius. Then November 1st, it's 1.50 AU. This is pre-retrograde. So this is where it starts to get fun. And that's in a transit of Sagittarius. And this is after the Perihelion. So October 38th was near Perihelion, and that was very close to the sun, as I just described earlier. So now we have this moving after the perihelion, a direction change. Much like how the retrograde or pre-retrograde is taking place, right? And so November 15th, 1.75 AU is now fully in retrograde. The 3-eye atlas has no Earth-side visibility. Very interesting. We cannot see what's going on. Then we have the transit in Sagittarius until 18th of November. December the 1st, 2.10 AU. Again, no visibility. This is post-retrograde, and then it's going direct. That means it's going directly back into Scorpio. Yeah? In the 10th house. Then it continues. So we got December 15th. 3-eye atlas is closest approach to the Earth, which is at 1.8 AU. So this is 1.8 AU. So it would be roughly around here. And then again, December 19th, we have post-shadow in Scorpio. So this is once it's left out now. And so let me just mark. Where it could be, where the silence is. Yeah, so no Earth visibility was here. So there's some parallels here when it comes to the behavior of Mercury retrograde and the behavior of the 3-eye atlas. Let me know what you found, if you see anything, but I found that very interesting. And so where this silence is, I think these are very potent times, November 15th to December. And there's a lot of fear-mongering going around, and it's from every corner. And I feel like it's to ignore the noise. if there's something that doesn't feel right, right? Like, let's say if you're listening to something on social media and you immediately feel a sense of fear, say, is that something that I need to work through? Or is this something trying to give me the Mars moons? Yeah, is it trying to give me fear? And because Mars, again, is going to go wherever it wants to go. All it wants to do is do action. So unless it's directed sensibly, it's going to cause a ruckus. It doesn't care. So how are you directing that on an emotional level? If something is giving you a sense of fear, or something's giving you, or trying to give you a sense of fear, or a sense, how are you empowering yourself through that? How are you working through some of the squares? How are you working through some of the oppositions? How are you rising above that? And I think that's what the message is. So now, even looking at it in this way, when we understand Mercury retrograde, and there's this big idea of fear around it, perhaps maybe there's a clue that suggests that it's the complete opposite. And actually, it's that time where you have full retrograde, and you also have post-retrograde direct. And I would even say just add in some pre-retrograde energy. I would say these are very potent times of the retrograde. These are potent times, and these are the times to challenge, right? Mercury is seen as, I like to say, is seen as a Nancy. Okay, it's seen as the trickster that's got all the stories from the gods and is out to distribute to the world. But what's your story? Are you deserving of that level of information, or are you still with a consciousness that probably is resonating on a low frequency? You know what I mean? Are you able to see through the illusions of Mercury? Because Mercury is loving, but it's no fool. It's like, yeah, you got tricked last time. You went round and went back to that person again, or you went round and you decided that you didn't want to be this way, or whatever it is. Like, whatever it is that you are recycling or keep doing, it's like, no, sorry. I know Saturn has his rules, but Mercury, I have my own rules. And yeah, I'm about knowledge, and I'm about communication. So if you're not communicating correctly, if you're not communicating in a way that allows me to think that you can get this energy, you can get this download, I guess I'm going to pass you by, you know? So I see it in that way. And so that puts me to this idea of this fear mongering around like moments in time, whether it's the retrograde, whether it's an apocalyptic, whatever. And I say, why are people so obsessed with the apocalypse? Like, it's just, you know what I mean? And so I looked at apocalyptic scenarios across time. One apocalypse that we all have shared is the good old pandemic, isn't it? That is one. Now, in terms of everything else, so let's have a look. So I've plucked things from different timelines. Obviously I'm not going to write all of them. So historical apocalypse. So 1524, we have Johann Stoifler predicts planetary transform. And this, we will get here, because this is one of the oldest, not one of the oldest, but it's a very interesting discussion to have when we talk about the consciousness of us, okay? And the consciousness at the time was, or humanity's collective thinking was panic, let's build some boats, let's run to the hill, because the prophecy was that there's going to be a flood. In 1900, you have Halley's Comet fears, solar eclipse, right? So whether it's the eclipse, and we had an eclipse, and the radical Christians were talking about the rapture. In Halley's Comet fears, solar eclipse, there was this debate between science and superstition versus superstition. Then we had 1999, and there was this narrative of the Y2K. And And this brought a level of anxiety. There's talks about technology or things not working. And even talking about the Y2K and talking about the telecommunications, that took a really big shift in terms of the digital age, because everything in terms of communication was happening through phones or dial-up. And so even that was changing. And even now, where I think not necessarily they dissolved, but they've transformed into something else in terms of telecommunications, in terms of the base technology or the foundation of that technology was changing from analog to digital, right? And that probably is very painstaking, but hey, somebody's got to do it. And that could be a whole conversation talking about telecommunication, but let's continue. So anyway, we had the solar eclipse again. So we've got some eclipses here. This idea of panic, anxiety, and some people were curious, like, oh, is the world really going to end? Like, is everything going to just reset and we're not going to really be able to function? Like, what's going to happen? Or the computers are all going to crash, And 2011, we had Harold Campin, the rapture prediction. So this is a very strong rapture prophecy or media outlet, right? So the media amplifies fear. So there's a lot about fear, panic, anxiety. It's the same thing. It's a cycle, right? It's very Saturnian. It's the cycle of time. And Saturn's just saying, yeah, let's go again. Let's go again. Are they gonna work it out? Yeah, probably not. It's a pattern, And so 2019 to 2020, as everybody knows, this is probably the most recent that was the real apocalypse, if we're gonna call it that. The COVID strain was the aliens. Yeah, but they just weren't big like we see them on Hollywood TV shows or whatever, or movies. And there was this doomsday narrative, like what's going to happen, and literally nobody knew what was going to happen. No. I laugh, but wow, what a time to live. And then we had social media panic, which got emphasized because, again, we are learning so much from social media. We are this hive mind within social media, learning so much about so many things at one given time. And then we had the 2024 to 2025 Pluto in Aquarius. So we've got this more softer element going on. And now we're just observing and questioning, okay? After all of this doomsday narrative shenanigan and COVID, we're just like, yeah, hold up, wait a minute, okay? Because a lot of things were revealed back then. You're not just going to sell me anything. However, we still did have rapture narratives and people literally going out selling their things. Wow. And that leads back to 1524. And 1524, you had the London astrologer flood, right? It wasn't just London, but there was a guy called George Trombley who actually built an ark to say, hey, y'all, I don't know about you guys, but I've built this ark and I'm just following the steps of Noah. That's what I'm saying. I'm a chosen one. I'm sorry about it. And he spent a lot of money building this ark on the River Thames. And this is primarily why I chose this one. Of all the apocalypse to choose, I chose this one. And yeah, George Trombley was, I can see him really feeling himself like, yeah, all of you lot are gonna drown. Sorry about it, but I'm okay. And so let's talk about the astrologer, right? So the astrologer, he was also a mathematician and very highly regarded, right? So Johann Stoffler, he basically started to see that there was something happening in the sky, right? That was very much like, I need to tell people this. So what was happening? So there was a stellium in the house of Pisces. And they call that very similar to when Jesus was born. They call it the Great Conjunction. And when you have the Great Conjunction, and this is in the house of Pisces, very like hard stellium elements, they in past years they referred this as something must be happening, and because again it was in the house of Pisces, there was this idea of the flood. But Johann Steufler wasn't the guy that did that. He was just saying, hey guys, I think something very amazing is happening here. And he alluded to this idea of new beginnings or a reset or something of this kind. And he wanted to just let people know. And once he declared that, other astrologers were like, they wanted to take the limelight. So human behavior, I guess, right, is no different, even if you're an astrologer. I'm pretty sure people are still doing those kind of things now, right? So another astrologer, his name was Luca Gaurico, an Italian astrologer who decided to expand on it and say, well, I feel like it's a flood and the false prophet is coming and all this kind of stuff. I allude Luca Gaurico to be Mercury, right? The trickster. Like, whether he was alluding to the idea or it was conscious or unconscious to him that that's the archetype that he would come under, in my opinion. He designed a pamphlet, right? I think he's a very good artist, or like he did a lot of artwork. And I've just did like a really basic idea of the pamphlet that he had, but you can look at it online, or later I might just add a link so that you can see what you can see everything in detail. But just to break it down, so this pamphlet, so they, pushed Yowen out of the way and said, hey, move out of the way. We want to hear about this flood because you're talking about something is happening, but this guy is telling us specifically there's a false prophet, there's a flood, it's doomsday. We're going to listen to this guy. So everybody's panicking, right? And he drew this image, which is, again, this is why I feel it was very Mercury, right? So he drew a fish, which fish represents Pisces, but he specifically drew a salmon. And a salmon, even how they go on their course of life is fascinating. They swim in the opposite direction when they want to lay eggs. Like, just choosing that fish in particular is very interesting to me. And inside the fish, they show a man sleeping. And I alluded that to, this is my interpretation, right? They didn't really go too much into the idea of the image, just more like this is the image for the doomsday, right? But I'm breaking it down, okay? So the fish, again, Pisces, the man sleeping is the subconscious, right? It's the astral realm. And then they had like the stars or the planetary alignments. And then they had the sun, and they also had the crescent moon. And then they have an outpouring of such, which outpours on this side. There was like a landslide of like humans, dying. Okay. And then on this side, you had churches and temples, spaces for public, but spaces for those of a higher echelon. So let's just divide this, because this was very interesting to me. So on this side, the wealthy people are on this side, right? They were depicted with crowns and, high headgear that showed a level of status. And on this side, the first two guys that are interesting, because the first guy, he's actually happy. He's like, oh, let me have some of this, And the rest at the back are still kind of apprehensive. They're curious. And then on this side, on the left-hand side, the phrase, blessings falls upon my right hand. On the left-hand side, you have someone with a scythe. Their leg is broken. They're wearing one of those crutch thingies, and he's looking down at this outpour in concern. He's not even concerned. He's just like, I don't want to go nowhere near that. Wherever that is, I don't want no parts of it. And then he's waving a flag like, I surrender. Like, please don't, whatever this is, I don't want, my leg is already broken. Like, come on now. Is death at my door? Is this why I got the scythe in my hand? I don't know. And then the rest of them are all kind of alluding to a similar thing. And then you have these two guys in the back. One, they're celebrating. One has a drum and one has a pipe, like a flute, so to speak. And they're happy. So the three people that are happy is these two guys and this guy. And I see it as an outpouring of consciousness. It's like, for those who will see, they will understand. At first instance, most people might be seeing this and more focus on this guy and think, oh man, yeah, everything's going, man. We're done out here. We're done. In actual fact, this was an outpouring of information and knowledge and ideas for the subconscious. And this guy knows, he's clued in. He knows what's going on. He's like, his hand is reaching out like, yeah, give me some of that. So the story was they, along with, George Trombley was doing his bits, he built his ark. Everybody else who couldn't afford to do the same ran up to the hills. They sold their land. They sold everything because they said, we don't need it. So they went up to the hills, and everybody just waited. And there was no flood, but it did rain. And so guess who got the stick for it? Because at this point, Yo and Stoifler are probably like, oh man, please let Luca be right, because if this doesn't go the way I need it to go, everyone's gonna come for me. And yeah, everyone kind of denounced him and was just like, oh, you're wrong, you're this, you're that. And he's like, I didn't say it was a flood. I didn't say that. So I found that story really interesting, because even in the 1500s, ladies and gentlemen, people are selling up things and panicking. So in terms of the collective consciousness, it would be fair to say that some people remain the same in terms of the collective, okay? And this is where it started to get juicy, because I was like, oh, so that means if people from the 1500s to now are still behaving in the same fear mindset, that means they must be different types of consciousness, which we did go over before. And so now I wanted to break it down more in a social aspect. And I saw, so let's look at that. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say. So if anything did shift, the idea of the Catholic Church, the authority was questioned in 1517. So this was before 1524. And so even by then, this kind of questioning or like the church is doing some really strange things that are going against what the word said. Should we believe them anymore? And they had a lot of say in a lot of things. And so if anything, that was probably the event that took place. So generally, if we're looking at it, one is about consciousness download. If we're thinking of the 3-eye atlas, and I guess with Mercury retrograde, consciousness download, and also a shift in perspective when it comes to what once was, right? So now the Catholic Church once had authority and once had power. Think about all the things that once had authority and once had power. Maybe the things, again, if we look at this Chiron element, Chiron is the wounded healer, is the teacher. It would be under the popes and the priests, right? It's the ones that are giving information. And so perhaps at this point, the type of I don't know how it may look might be different. It might be flipped on its head. Maybe how you understood taking in information looks different now. Maybe it isn't so whatever. Right? Fit it to how you need to. Whatever it is now, flip it. Yeah. So it's what's it called? The underworld, or the upside down. It's the opposite. So there's that. Let's continue. So I broke down the astrologer flood astrologically, but I've explained this already, well ahead of myself. And but I was talking about maybe there's some correlation in terms of Mercury, in the same way I've done where art Mercury in this time and space. And I wanted to see where it was in 1524. And when planets were moving into it, not quite aligned yet, not quite making a stellium, it was, Mercury was direct. So it was like a pre-retrograde. And so then in February 1524, when the event actually happened, you then had Mercury conjunct the sun, stationed or near retrograde. So then you had March 1524. So this is afterwards, that you actually had the full retrograde taking place. So there is something happening here in relation to retrogrades and planetary phenomena, let's call it. That you know, there's something interesting about that. Now, let's look at this Berkeley study, because this was, when I was reading the study, I actually laughed out loud, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is something like, it's very fatherly, like a very strict father. Like they would test you to, just to prove a point, right? It felt like that. And so what it was, the paper's called Using Apocalyptic Prophecy to Elicit Religious Belief. And the idea was, ultimately, as your conviction increases, your perceived risk decreases. And so they were, as they said it, they were kind of like intuitively saying, I believe before we do this test that they already had a preconceived idea that they're going to do this test, and most people are going to weigh out money towards whether or not they're going to do something or not. But some people hold money in high regards more than others, and that would then determine how convicted they are in themselves. It's a great paper if you want to have a look at it. Again, if somebody asks, I'll put it in the description and you can have a read. But yeah, the strength of convictions determining behavioral response. So even when I did it, I was like, okay, I really feel, based on this idea that there are different people. Some people have the same mindset as people from the 1500s. It is wild to think of it like that. This fear-based, mindset. But yes, I decided to incorporate what I've read and look at the Christians who are come and the Christians who were bought. And let's go. So basically quantifying consciousness through cost behavior. So those with low conviction, because it was kind of, what was it now? So it was like, hey, apocalypse is going to happen. And, like we can pay you money should it happen. So like obviously if there's an apocalypse and you're not taken up or however it works, then we will make sure that you're okay. But you've got to give us money so that you can secure yourself, kind of thing. I found it hilarious, man. It was so funny. And people were like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't want to be in a position where like I'm out here on these streets. And so, and then the other Christians who were more convicted in their religious beliefs were like, nah, this sounds like a pyramid scheme. This sounds dodgy. It sounds like some occultic. What is this? This doesn't align with the word of God, right? So this is someone that studies the word, that walks in their truth. And they said, nah, sorry, I'm okay. Like, if that's what you want to do, that's what, if it's my time, then it's my time. But I trust God first before I trust in man. And so they said, okay, right. We've understood this, right? So those with low conviction, even if they're religious, even if they say that they are a Christian, it's more about the conviction. So if it's low, they have high fear. So money becomes their safety. Money, questionably, becomes their Lord. And so they would be at a level 1 or 2, right? Because it's your fear-based, selective group of people. And then you have your conditional people, right? Which money is validation. It's proof that you are something. I think a lot of people are at level 3. If I have a lot of material things or Saturnian things, therefore I am. And it's Saturn turned on its head. Because Saturn is not bad, but it's not good. But its rules have been thwarted. It's like, oh, you're supposed to be doing it like this. Oh, you're not supposed to be like that because look at your reputation. And you're just like, mind your business, mind your business. And this is where these level 3 mindsets, conditional, money is validation that you are worthy or you are enough or proof that you are someone. I think this can put you in a chokehold, this level of mindset. And then level 4, right? You're developing, you're actually starting to see, okay, actually, maybe let me use money not as an identity of someone. I'm a good, well, not even a good person, but I'm someone that should be respected because I have this quantity of value. Instead, I want to use money as a tool. So whether I'm investing or making my money make money, whatever it is, they start to look at money differently. And so these will be your level 4s. And then you have the types of those that have inner security. When we're getting here, we're talking about your Buddhists and monks. Yeah, we're talking about them levels there. Inner security, the idea of money is neutral. You're not obsessed by it, but you're not against it. Right? And I will put money under Saturn. Like, you're not overly obsessed with Saturn, which I think a lot of people are. I think it's weird. But like obsessed with Saturn, but you're balanced about, you understand the conditions of Saturn, especially in your astrological chart. You understand the rules of it and you're going to say, all right, cool. What do I need to do? I need to do this. All right, fine. And, Granddad Sat is Granddad Sat. He's lived long enough. He's done a lot of things and he's not letting you have it easy because he didn't have it easy. So, it is what it is. And so those who think of money neutrally, and again, you can just allude it to Saturn if you want, makes choices on values, right? Not fear, your personal values and a lot of people don't have internal values. Their value is based on validation of how much money or how much material things that you have as proof that they are valuable. And this is very matter based. This is very material based. And it's moving out of that, right? It's going to the exoplanets, it's going to Uranus, it's going to Neptune, well, specifically Neptune, to kind of really step in to that other area of self. Because I think it's fair to say we all have, we've all been in this physical realm and we've all got material things. It's time to, and I think that's what everyone's doing. We're in the age of grace. It's time to get into that spiritual bag. So what are we going to do when it comes to Mercury retrograde? I mean, you can have time to ruminate and have some thought, but how is it? Look at what is happening. It's very Uranian right now, very Uranian Neptunian right now in terms of the collective consciousness. We're using social media to have hive-like mindsets, to, there's a lot of like bullying and carrying, but like hive-like mindsets, and no one's individually going within. And you can tell they're not going within because the hive-like mindset would have, let's say if you had like a collective of people just buzzing around saying, I mean, normally these kind of mindsets, they don't vibrate high anyway, but like, let's just say they're all here talking about something, right? And they're all buzzing. If someone, one of them, right, we're going to name them as green, yeah, because they're a green flag, not a red flag. If they're green and they say, hey, you know what? Why are we talking about this? Like, what does this do for us? Does this make us happy? One person, that's all he has to take. And then immediately shut down. Everyone, there's some people that will turn green. And that's, when we're talking about shift in consciousness, that's what that looks like. It takes one person. And so when we talk about the three-eye atlas in its astrological sense, and we talk about its direct in terms of Chiron and conjunct Venus, there's something happening here. Are you going to use it or are you going to lose it? And then integrated awareness, right? Act intuitively. So everything's about, okay, I don't want to answer right now. Let me pray on it, or let me meditate on it, however it works for you. This is level 7. This is top tier, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. Think about it. Do you think as a collective we're here? Do you think we're here? So then I mean, even with this the thought process, there was this also understanding of Thoth as well. So I was like, okay, that would make sense. I kind of feel the way that this atlas is moving, or 3i is moving, it is giving Mercury vibes. So when I started reading on about Mercury, I was like, okay, let's have a look, right? So I did some writing earlier. It's normally my back of my page. Right, so the Emerald Tablet. So in these writings, in these scriptures that was once in the Bible, but it wasn't aligning with the agenda, so it got thrown out. So it's a book of interest. It's a book that should be looked at just for research purposes, to kind of give more depth to how astrology is seen. So there is a famous term, as above, so below, right? So it goes like, that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. And I feel like this is so potent because it basically tells you how things are shifting right now, or in general, how things move. And because we're in the age of Aquarius, because this is a new age, of course this energy is going to be coming around. And I only put it here because it syncs. Yeah, and it syncs beautifully. There is no fear here. There is no calamity here. It's just peace. It's just, hey, it is what it is here. Thoth is Hermes. Thoth is Mercury. Thoth, learning, is also Abraham. So Thoth is the person that does the carrying around, right? If is carrying the souls to the other side, or getting information from below, from above, and then coming back to Earth to give it to you, right? This is basically what is being said here. He's the one that can go through all densities. So if we expand this Mercury energy, not just like a flat astrological understanding, but we expand it out with the understandings of those that have spoken before, we start to have a better little flavor in the astrological wheel. There is talk about the return of light beings and cycles, and the return of star teachers, I guess, aka the divine ones, right? Or chosen ones. And I think these people come across time. I mean, even voodoo understanding, they say the same thing. There is this understanding of there are specific people in the world that are here to give knowledge, right? Are Mercury's voice box. and are light beings. And what I think when it comes to light beings, you might think that they look a certain way or are a certain way, but I think that could even be the Mercurian trick. Like, oh, are you going to see past the illusion? Are you going to see that this person carries information that you need? Or are you going to be bogged down with the Saturnian matter of things? Huh? And so tablet 1 of the Emerald Tablets. I took an excerpt of things I found of interest that I thought would interest you. So long ago, I, Thoth, embarked on the path that leads into the halls of Amenti, that I might live there through the ages, keeping the wisdom